Hi, it's Kristen, and I am going to celebrate this time of the year by doing a Pride themed reading vlog. So in this video I'll be reading a couple of queer books that have LGBTQ plus characters and by authors who identify within the community. Don't know right now what I plan to read throughout, but I know I'm going to start with The Flames of Albion. Flames of Albion is by Jean Z. Mingus. This is self-published. It's about a young woman called Adaria who lives and was raised within this academic university in this fantasy realm called Albion, and there's an egg there that's property of the university. It's been there for years. It's a dragon egg, but it's unhatched. And then one day Adaria unwittingly wakes the dragon egg up, and yeah, that's really all I know. So we're gonna see how this goes. I've heard it's cozy, fun fantasy vibes, so that's what I am in the mood for. Let's get into it. I have been reading The Flames of Albion and it's going okay. I was really pleasantly not surprised, but I was happy to see that at the start we get right into it almost straight away with the egg, the dragon egg, starting to crack, and the people in the school, the council they have there, saying to our main character Adaria that the dragon has bonded with her, and so I was like, right, we're getting right into it, no messing around. But then it took 80 pages for the dragon egg to actually hatch, and all that time was just her thinking about the dragon egg, worrying about the dragon egg. And we were introduced to other characters. We've been introduced to Isla, who I think is going to be the love interest, and her dragon. So stuff has happened, but not a lot. And I'm 100 pages in now, and I don't really know where it's going, because we've had the premise of it already, and it's what, I don't know what the conflict is going to be. I mean, there's been talk of stuff going on in different areas of the land and people having different political ideas, and so obviously I think that is going to come into play, but I don't know in what way and how exciting or interesting that'll be. I'm not entirely sure what the characters' goals or aims are gonna be. Yeah, and also I like the characters. I like Adaria and Isla. They seem okay. They seem nice enough. I don't know that I get a ton of chemistry between them, romantic or sexual tension or chemistry. So I don't know how invested in their romance I'm gonna be. I was just hoping I'd like this a lot more, because yeah, when I started it I was like, oh, this is readable, it's written in a very simple way, the fantasy stuff's not too heavy, I don't feel bogged down in stuff. But then in the same way, it's been almost so simple so far that I don't have a huge sense of the world. But I think this was Jean Mingus's first, I know it's self-published, but I think it was her first book, fiction book. And so like I'm not going to fault it for not being like really complex, because like it's her first book. She has time to grow as a writer. But I was really hoping I'd like get into it and then be really in it and just like whiz through. But I've been reading it for a few days now and I'm only like 100 or so pages in. There are moments where I could have been reading, but I just didn't, because like when I'm reading it I'm enjoying it well enough, but then when I put it down I don't feel super compelled to pick it back up, you know? But I feel like maybe I just need to make myself sit down and read like a chunk at a time, and maybe that will help me get more into it. So maybe that's what I'll do tomorrow. Tomorrow I don't have to work except for the evening, and no one else is going to be in the house, so for at least like a certain amount of time. So I feel like maybe I'll get up, I'll go for my run, I'll come home, and I'll just read as much as I possibly can. I'm still finding this just okay, but I've made good progress with it today. I'm like nearing the end. I will say I do enjoy the bits where the characters are like doing research, because I feel like you can tell that the author is like an academic, and she's talked a lot on her YouTube channel about like doing her PhD and stuff, and I feel like you can tell that she has done a lot of research. And it really reminds me of like when I would go to the library at university with my friends and we'd like all sit around a table together and, you know, find the perfect reference to use, find the perfect book to use for an essay. And it just makes me feel quite nostalgic for that feeling. So I like when those bits happen. That feels like really real to me. But the rest of it, like, stuff is happening, like things are going bad at the university and like politically in the area, but I'm like not that bothered. Like I sort of want to know what's going on and like who poisoned her dragon when her dragon was a baby, but like I'm not overly invested, but I'll finish it. So I finished The Flames of Albion by Jean Mingus, and I wanted to really like this one, but it was just okay. Like I didn't feel that connected to any of the characters. I thought like some of them were nice enough, but I didn't really feel like any of them had that much about them to make them particularly interesting. And so when it came to like the relationships between the characters, I also like didn't get invested, especially between Isla and Adaria, who have this like romance that I think you're supposed to be really into, based on the fact that like towards the end of the book they say that they love each other, and I never like really got their connection, other than that they were nice to each other and they like had some nice conversations, but that was it. I did like that them being queer and other characters being queer like wasn't a thing. Like obviously this is a fantasy universe where that just like is fine. There was no like prejudice towards any of the queer characters for that, which I liked. I think it's nice when we don't have like our current present day real life prejudices shoved into fantasy books for like no reason. There are like conversations around prejudice in here, but it's between like races of like the fantasy creatures. Like there's an elf and a human who are in a relationship, and some of the like more traditional elves, or like one character in here looks down on their relationship. So you do have prejudice within the fantasy world, but it's not going like gay people because that's just not really a thing in here to be prejudiced about. This I went into thinking it was a standalone, and I've seen other people talk about it as like it's a cozy fantasy standalone, but nothing is wrapped up by the end of the book. And then at the very end it says like the end for now, but like quite a big thing happens at the end of the book. Like a fire is started and they find out who set the fire, but it's clear that he didn't do it like of his own volition, or it wasn't his idea. So like we sort of know potentially who like is behind it, but it's never like outed. They don't get any comeuppance. Some of the characters are like forced into a situation that like, oh, we have to go off now and we can't stay here, but like that's how it ends, and there's no resolution to it. The like feuding of the country and the political things that are going wrong aren't sorted. So like I wouldn't say it was like, people who say you can read it as a standalone, I wouldn't say it's a satisfying standalone. But I also don't know that like I'm invested enough if there was a sequel to read the sequel. I don't know. Maybe I would, to see if it was like better, to see if the author has grown with her writing and stuff. But yeah, I was really hoping I'd love this one, and it was just like very average, which is a shame. Not a super successful first read for this vlog, but like I'm glad I've got it off my shelves. So yeah, it was okay. But now I'm done with The Flames of Albion, I'm gonna change the tone of things by picking up Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt. This is about 3 girls, I think like in their final year of uni or just out of uni, who decide to go to this abandoned house. There's lots of rumours about it being haunted, and the 3 women go in and only 2 come out, and something obviously happened in the house, but we don't know what. That is sort of in the past, and the actual like present day narrative that we're following is, I believe, 3 years after that. So we follow Alice and Isla, and whatever happened in the house has like torn their friendship apart. They like don't talk anymore, they don't have anything to do with each other, and it's a very complicated relationship between them. I've heard this is really intense. Alice is a trans woman, and so I know that there's a lot in here about like the trans experience, and there's also a lot of transphobia from other characters directed towards Alice and other trans people in the story. So it's not going to be a fun, easy read. I mean, it's horror, but also from the perspectives of like the content in terms of those things. I know that there's a lot of slurs, so if you're trans, or if you're not trans but just sensitive to like slurs and language that can be very offensive. Know that that is a thing. I also have heard that there's a lot of like sexual content, whether it's talked about or it's on page, and yeah, I've heard just generally it's very intense to read. So I'm like excited to get into it because I've heard really good things, but I'm also like a little bit hesitant, a little bit wary. It does feel like a massive tone change going from reading The Flames of Albion, which was very cozy, sweet, like did have like fantasy politics and some tension, but overall was like mainly about like friendships and relationships and love and, you know, coming together and fighting the system a little bit, to this, which just sounds very dark. Really feel like I'm going from one end to the other on like a literary genre tone spectrum. But yes, I will get into this and let you know my thoughts. This is a new location. I've never filmed here before. I'm in one of the other rooms at my work. Everyone else has gone home for the day. I'm just hanging around before I get a bus elsewhere. Update on Tell Me I'm Worthless. I was talking to my sister about this earlier. It's interesting to read because like it's not a book that I want to say I'm enjoying or I'm liking, because like it's not a fun read. I'm not enjoying it, and like I don't want to say that I like it because like the content is kind of horrible. I said to her as well, I was finding it like quite compelling, I guess, to read, because I was like, it's not easy to read because again the content's so horrible and it's it just makes you like feel not very nice. I feel like when you're reading it, so it's not easy to read, but it's well written and it's, yeah, I guess compelling is the word I would use, because it does keep me wanting to read. So yeah, it's not readable in a fun way, but it's readable in, yeah, an interesting, intriguing, intense way. One thing I do think very interesting to know, I'm like just over halfway through and I've had a couple of chapters from the perspective of this haunted house now, and the last book I read for this video obviously was The Flames of Albion, and in that one of our main characters, the love interest, it's called Isla, Isla, and in this one of our POV characters is, I think, called Isla, Ila, no S, but another character pronounces it Ela and she's like, that's not right, so I'm assuming it's Isla. And then we got to a chapter that's from the perspective of the house, and the house is like talking about its history and how it came to be and how it was named, and the house's name is Albion. I was like, this is such a weird coincidence that these two books that like aren't remotely connected that I have only connected because I read them both for this video, both have like prominent characters named Isla, and the places they are set are both called Albion. Just kind of odd, to be honest. But yeah, this feels like, I said to my sister, it feels like one of those books that like cool, edgy literary girls read. And maybe that's me if I'm reading it and liking it. My sister didn't really like it. She said it felt like a book that she should like, or not necessarily like, but she feels like she should have read it and gone, wow, that was so like poignant and important feeling. But she was sort of like, I just didn't like the experience of reading it remotely. However, I have not got to the bit that really like made her really uncomfortable, which I know is an on page dual rape scene. So it's very possible that I will get to that bit and just not be okay. But my sister wasn't really liking it, like up to that point anyway, whereas I am kind of liking it. Again, like I said, not liking it, but finding it interesting and stuff. Massive trigger warnings before even getting to the on-page incident, but slurs, talk of sexual assault and rape, just like, yeah, really lots of uncomfortable content in here. I listened to a podcast ages ago when this first came out or was coming out, an episode of What Page Are You On? And the hosts, Alice and Bethany, interviewed the author. So I feel like maybe when I finish this, I want to go back, find that old episode and re-listen to it, because I know that when they were talking about it, I thought it sounded really interesting. And so it's why I borrowed it from my sister when I realised she had it. But I think it would be interesting now, having read it, or like I will have read it, to hear what the author says. But yeah, I'm over halfway through now. I feel like we're gonna find out some stuff because I've reached the first chapter, potentially the only chapter, I don't know, that says Hannah instead of Alice, Isla, or House. And Hannah has been like this character in the background who was their friend in the past, and something happened and she went missing, died, stayed in the house, and we don't really know what happened, but just that it was like traumatizing to Alice and Isla. So reaching a chapter with her name makes me feel like things are going to come to light. But yeah, I just really love this cover as well. I think it's so interesting, and the title just feels very, very punk. It says punk in every sense of the word. By Eliza Clark said that. But yeah, I'm gonna get back into this. I think I'll just maybe update you maybe when I've reached that really intense scene to see if my perspective changed, or maybe just when I finished. I will let you know my thoughts. I finished Tell Me I'm Worthless. This was quite the book. Was it a good book? Yes, I think so. It was incredibly intense. Obviously, I read the dual perspective scene that I had told you about. It was like a bit odd to read because it splits literally into like two columns. I'm going to see if I can find it now. And it's sort of like, I guess you have to decide which way to read it. So like, I won't show you what happened, but it's like that. So one perspective is Isla's perspective and one perspective is Alice's perspective. And so it's like, do you read one perspective entirely and then go back to the start of that like chapter, that section, and then read the other perspective entirely? I decided to read like each page and like go back and forth between the two obviously that didn't, I like would get to the end of a sentence because sentences ran on to the next page. But I read like the one column, most of it, for Isla and then Alice, and then flip back and forth between the pages, which I think was an interesting choice for me to do, because in a way I kept being like, wait, now whose perspective am I in? What is happening to each character? Like, hold on, no, they're in like this positioning in the room for this perspective, and it's that positioning of the room for that perspective. And I had to like remind myself, even over the course of only a few pages. But then I think that's also kind of a good way to read it, because it felt very like confusing, and not confusing, but like, I don't know, almost like claustrophobic, messing with your mind a bit, which is like what the whole scene gives those vibes. And like in the run up to that bit, there was like a lot of intense, like typical actual horror stuff. Like that scene is very violent, quite gory, big on the like haunted house element. So this book does have like your more traditional horror, when you think of horror like being scary. It has those elements in here, but it also has a lot of like real life horror, in terms of like talking about transphobia, racism, like a massive running theme throughout this whole book. You could argue what the whole book is about is like fascism, and the rise of fascism, and the rise of the far right, like in the world in general, but especially like in this country, the rise of people being against immigrants, against trans people, and yeah, how that's becoming more prevalent. And considering this book was written like recently-ish, 2021, so 4 years ago, I feel like this is almost even more on the nose now. I think it's very relevant, and very tough to read, like very depressing. I re-listened to the episode of What Page Are You On, where they talk about this, which is where I first heard about this book. And they were talking about how like there are funny moments in it, and there is like a bit, some of the characters are like quite sarcastic or witty, but I don't know that I ever found it funny. And they say there are moments of lightness to it, and again, I don't know that I agree with that. But it is a good book. It's Alison Rumfitt's debut, which I find kind of incredible, because I think it's such a bold, like daring debut. It's written well, and also interestingly, like you have the dual perspective. There's one bit where a character is like reading a post on like, I don't know, some blog, like Reddit maybe, or like 4chan or something, and it's just like run on sentences, sort of incoherent, like rambling, and it's all written like just running through and through. So I think like it's, the style of certain bits of it is a very bold way to write, and then just like the themes are so intense, and just really daring to discuss in a book like this. It's a book that I thought was really good. I think it's one that's going to really stick with me, and I'm going to think about a lot, but it is not a book that I would remotely think to widely recommend, or even like recommend to anyone who wouldn't really be into reading a very intense horror book with lots of slurs, lots of transphobia, lots of racism, some body horror. It's like really intense. It's not one that if a friend was like, what's a good horror book, I'd go, oh, Tell Me I'm Worthless. Like, absolutely not. But a very good book. We have reached the end of this Pride vlog. I wanted to get this up so much sooner, and like things just didn't work out for that to happen. I wanted to read more than 2 books, but that, yeah, just wasn't a reality. So I only read 2 books for this video, but I'm happy. I feel like they, like I said, covered the spectrum. This is a cozy queer fantasy with a female main couple. This was a intense, dark, haunted house queer horror centering around trans identities. So I feel like that's kind of a good mix. But because I only read 2 books and didn't get to some of the other things in my TBR, I did think I would just mention some like other queer books that I've loved in the past, like some recommendations that I would give, in case you like came to this video thinking you'd hear about loads of like LGBT plus books. So a few that I've read in the past and enjoyed to like varying degrees, but I feel like I got something out of each of them, whether I think that was like really heartfelt or just like fun. So Sister Song by Lucy Holland. This is like British folk retelling, which has a trans man as one of the main characters. It's about like siblings and magic and community. I just really liked it. It's really stuck with me. I thought the trans rep was very good. But yeah, so that one I really liked. Then I've got You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kaylin Bayron. This wasn't like a favourite book of mine. I did enjoy it. I gave it like 3 stars. But I had a lot of fun with it. I read it in a day. It's very short. This is about a girl who works at a summer camp where they run like a terror game. So she plays the final girl, and then it's like sort of an escape room, yeah, horror slasher game that they play with people who visit. But then one night someone actually dies or actually gets attacked, and they have to work out what the heck is going on. This wasn't what I thought it was gonna be. Like on the whole, I think there are like a few twists and turns in here that I wasn't expecting. But overall, like I had fun with it. If you like a good slasher, I think this definitely gave me the vibes I get from watching a slasher movie. It was fun, not the best thing I've ever read, but like good. And the main character is in a relationship with a girl. Then we have The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. This is a story about 3 sisters who are all witches, and it's like their first time coming back together after a few years and getting wrapped up into this big magical plot. It's not like a focus in here, but 2 of the sisters have romantic storylines with other people, and one of the sisters is in a relationship with a woman. This is set in the 1890s, so obviously there's some stuff there. They can't be super open with their relationship, and I want to say there's also a trans character if I remember correctly, but that's like a very small thing. They're just like a minor character in the background. But this, yeah, is about sisterhood, magic, finding sisterhood with other people as well, and just like the lengths that you will go to for the people you care about. I really loved this one. And then I've got To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. This one, the main character is queer. She has a relationship with a man and a woman. It's not like a huge thing. It's just about like finding comfort. It's a very quiet, emotional story just about like living and relationships. This features a crew who are like traveling to different planets and other worlds in space, hoping to like send information back to Earth because the Earth is like becoming hostile and dying. And yeah, it's just a very short, very sweet, heartfelt sci-fi with a queer main character. So those are all books I would recommend if you're looking for books with more queer characters, queer relationships, etc. I think Sister Song is like quite emotional, as I would say is The Once and Future Witches. This is like emotional but hopeful, and then this is kind of dark but also like a lot of fun for the most part if you like find slashers fun. And then of the two books I read in this vlog, very intense, hard-hitting, dark, yeah, horror vibes, and then cozy fantasy. So those are some LGBTQIA+ books. Have you read any of these? Do you have any recommendations for good books with good queer representation? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video and happy Pride. Bye.